And of course, Caroline Lucas here, who's whose giant achievement was to win the UK's first ever parliamentary seat for our party in 2010. All of you. So thank you, Brighton, for making history with us then and for voting for Caroline in ever greater numbers in every election since. We often say that just one green in the room makes a world of difference. Time and again, Brighton and Hove has shown how much of a difference.
And our ability to make a difference has never been more urgently needed. We have a government that is taking a wrecking ball to the environment, that is trashing its own climate pledges, that has given a green light to a coal mine in Cumbria, and most recently and most recklessly has given that green light to Rosebank, the biggest oil field off the coast of Shetland. That is why we say that that is enough. Enough is enough, not in our name. They have to go. But we don't just have a Prime Minister that's turned his back on the climate crisis, the climate emergency and all of the science that goes with it. We have a Home Secretary who is ripping up legal protections for refugees and asylum seekers. We have a Chancellor who is actively making lives harder for some of the poorest people. Frankly, Conference, we have a whole cabinet whose sole purpose appears to be to stoke division and to stir up culture wars. And that is why we are saying that our most important objective, the thing that we cannot let us distract us from, is making sure that we get more Greens elected at the next general election.
In the election that's approaching, we stand between Conservatives, Labour and Lib Dems, who are all pushing a mushy middle ground, and their wish for a parliament with no Greens and no one representing vital policies people desperately need. Fair wages and taxes, rent controls, generous social security, the Green New Deal that the climate emergency demands, human rights and support for migrants, less traffic and safer streets. How hard is it to support that? That's what we stand for here in Brighton and Hove this weekend, and we're standing loud and proud for our green values.
Conference, I couldn't be happier that Sian Berry is standing for us in Brighton Pavilion. She has such a long and distinguished record of standing up for what matters, of getting stuff done, and of speaking truth to power. And I just... I know that she will do Brighton proud. She will keep Pavilion green, and I shall be proud to be alongside her every step of the way. But of course, it's not just here in Brighton where we're on course to make a real difference at the next general election. In Bristol Central, Carla is on track to be the next Green MP. Your hands are going to hurt, so just stagger it. But in Waveney Valley, I am delighted to say that Adrian Ramsay is on track to be the next Green MP. And in North Herefordshire, Ellie Chowns is on track to be the next Green MP. Job between now and the next general election is to get Sian elected, to get Carla elected, Adrian and Ellie, and my friends, that is just the start.
And of course, Conference itself is another example of Greens doing things differently, a chance for every single member to get involved in making policy. And I hope you'll join me and Caroline this weekend to vote for an even more ambitious approach to delivering warm homes, to actively champion Gypsy, Roma and traveller rights, and for a ban on high-carbon advertising. And as well, a huge welcome to conference first-timers. Hands up if you are one. Welcome. Also to Brighton first-timers, welcome. And of course, to everybody who already knows conference and the city very well already. Welcome to all of you. There's something for everyone this weekend. I especially recommend, if you want to make the absolute most of your time, joining me to knock on doors, there we are, and speak to our fantastic residents. Brighton and Hove Greens have a stall where you can sign up, or you can put your phone at that right now. Sign up and get out on the doors. Our residents are wonderful. Are you going to help us? Yeah. Thank you very much. So it just remains for us to say some heartfelt thank yous. Thank you to everyone who has donated or is thinking of donating to the party. It takes an awful lot to win a seat at the general election, and your support is absolutely invaluable. We will be asking again and again for your continued support, because we don't have anyone else to bankroll us, unlike the other parties. We need you, our members, to make that difference too.
And I have a few thank yous of my own to add. First of all, thank you to the Green administration here in Brighton and Hove, who stepped up at a time when no one else would, and who steered our city through COVID and so many other challenges. We are indebted to you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you as well to every single councillor in England and Wales who day in, day out represent people in the halls of power, make sure that there is a strong green voice speaking truth to power in all of those. Thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you, of course, to Conferences Committee and all of the amazing staff and volunteers who are working their socks off to make sure that this conference is a success. Thank you to you. And I think the biggest thank you is to our amazing leadership team, to Carla, Adrian and Zach. I want to thank our leadership team for all that they do, for absolutely being there at our 50th anniversary, for being there at our most momentous time in our history, there on the cusp of our most ambitious general election campaign that we've ever run. We are so grateful to them for their principled leadership, for their inspiration, for their tireless commitment to this party. And so, conference, a big round of applause, please, for Carla and Adrian. A round of applause, welcoming them to Brighton, welcoming them.
Tonight's gonna be a good night. I feel it. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be
Thank you. It is wonderful to be here in Brighton and to see so many passionate Greens in this room.
Yeah, give yourselves a cheer.
This is such a special place for our party, a place where we've made history more than once. It's a privilege to be back, and at such a crucial moment for the party and for the country. I'm sure, like me, many of you will read the headlines each morning, watch the news each night, and think, how do the Conservatives keep finding new ways to break Britain? After 13 years, it's actually quite a feat. But no matter what new climate crime or damaging policy the government comes up with, Labour somehow manages to disappoint us just as much. Time after time, they come out swinging at the Conservatives. And then when asked, does this mean you'll reverse these decisions if you get into government? Radio silence. They are bystanders to the Conservatives' chaos, caring more about doing politics than about what's right. And it begs the question, what's the point of an opposition if they don't provide any opposition? We are all here because we know that as a country, we can do better than this. And we know the people in this room and the people who are steadily adding their vote to our rising numbers, that there is a party with a transformative vision that our country is crying out for, with ambitious policies to use this critical moment to restore nature, to tackle the climate crisis and bring an end to decades of the struggle and rising inequality right across our country. Our plan means positive change, an ambitious way forward, a country and communities that thrive. People know that fairer and greener is achievable and a hell of a lot better than what the government is aiming for, an unfair, dirty, dangerous and divided Britain. With the general election coming up next year, we have an opportunity like never before to make a real difference. To elect 4 Green MPs who will lead the way for the other parties to follow. Because we know that we can do better than this.
The Conservatives have been a disaster for the climate, playing cynical political games with the biggest issue of our time. First, they cut the green crap, a decision that is still costing us dearly today, quite literally, dearly. Energy bills in the UK are nearly £2.5 billion higher than they would have been if the government hadn't dismissed climate policy over the last decade. Not content with that, they're now doubling down on their climate vandalism, granting permission for a huge coal mine, failing to get a single bid for vital offshore wind projects, weakening our net zero commitments and opening up the enormous Rosebank oil field. And Labour are following them every step of the way, willing onlookers to the Conservatives' climate crimes. Rosebank, the right decision, says Gordon Brown. Their reasoning, investor certainty. Sounds good, right? But let us translate. Labour is more interested in fossil fuel investors getting their dirty profits than in taking meaningful climate action. We know we can do better than this. And with more Green MPs in Parliament, we will. And while the Tories try to fold the climate emergency into their all-enveloping culture war, falsely pitting the cost of living against the cost of net zero, we in the Green Party know that the solutions to the climate crisis are the same as the solutions to the cost of living crisis. With 4 Green MPs in Parliament, we'll have the voices to call for a nationwide home insulation scheme, not just to lower emissions, but to make people's homes warm in winter and cut their bills for good. Proper investment in renewable energy, the cheapest way to generate electricity, not just to decarbonise our energy system, but to create new jobs across the country, improve our energy security and, again, cut bills for good. And while Labour frontbenchers tie their tongues in knots, saying they don't want new oil and gas, but they're not going to stop it, we know the science is clear. The climate doesn't care who signs the permit. No new oil and gas means no new oil and gas.
And on nature, the Conservative government is going above and beyond to wreck the natural environment on which we all depend. Private water companies are dumping sewage into our rivers and seas while taking on billions in debt to fund dividend payouts to shareholders. In rural areas, manure from industrial-scale meat production is choking our rivers. Government cuts to the Environment Agency mean they can cut corners knowing there'll be no consequences. Meanwhile, how does Keir Starmer respond to his shadow climate secretary's net zero plans? I hate tree huggers. Well, I don't know about you, but after the latest State of Nature report last week, which shows that Britain is one of the most nature-depleted countries on earth, we think that British politics could do with a few more politicians who are willing to stand up for the natural world. We know that we can do better than this. We must tackle the causes of the decline in nature and move away from intensive farming practices. And I know that farmers want to do the right thing for the environment. But what they tell me is that the government's funding to support sustainable farming is woefully inadequate. As the Nature 2030 coalitions of charities highlighted, nature needs a pay rise, and we need bigger and better spaces for nature to thrive. Our Green peers in the House of Lords did incredible work just last month in stopping the government scrapping protections against even higher levels of sewage in our rivers. But now Sunak is determined to bring it back in a new bill. How can anyone look at the toxic state of our rivers and seas and conclude, you know what this needs? Less regulation? With 4 Green MPs in Parliament, we'll be able to push for the action needed so that it's safe for kids to play on beaches, for swimmers to bathe off our coastlines, and for wildlife to thrive in our rivers. We'll have the platform to say what none of the other parties has had the courage to say, that the privatised water companies have failed, that there must be no more shareholder payouts until the water companies stop dumping sewage in our rivers, that the money we spend on water bills must be spent on updating the infrastructure, not filling the pockets of shareholders. And that water is run as the public service it should be, not the profit-making scheme that it's become, by bringing it back into public hands.
The NHS and our other public services have been brought to breaking point by 13 years of Conservative cuts, with patients and staff paying the price. Has it ever been so hard to find a dentist? Have we ever had to wait so long to see an NHS consultant? Those that can afford it are forking out for private healthcare. Those who can't afford it are left behind. And meanwhile, no solutions are being offered. The Tories blame medical staff, those frontline workers calling for a long overdue and well-deserved pay rise. And Labour's promise of reform rings hollow, given the scale of the crisis, and hints at more privatisation by the back door. We know we can do better than this. The Green Party believes in an NHS that sits fully in public hands, free at the point of use for all, including dentistry. And with 4 Green MPs in Parliament, we'll never let the other parties forget it. We know that claps don't pay the bills. We believe in decent pay and fair conditions for public sector workers and an NHS that provides the health safety net it was designed to all those years ago.
"13 years of Conservative cuts and short-term thinking has left our country in dire need of investment, with a crisis of inequality. The wealthiest few continue to profit and prosper, while the rising cost of food, bills and housing are pushing millions of others into a position of precarity and poverty. And at exactly the wrong moment, Labour are one by one dropping all their policies that were meant to offer people hope. They're turning their backs on the voters who so desperately need them to rise to the scale of the challenge. They claim to have done this in the name of fiscal responsibility. But what's responsible about letting 250,000 children grow up in poverty by keeping the Tories' cruel two-child benefit cap? Lifting that cap would cost just £1.3 billion a year, easily covered by putting up taxes for the super-rich, which would raise billions. We know that we can do better than this. And with 4 Green MPs in Parliament, the British public will finally hear the alternative. We'll have voices on the Green benches saying loudly and proudly, it's time to tax wealth. A modest tax on the wealth of the very richest, the absolute super-rich, multimillionaires and billionaires, would be transformative. And let's have a proper windfall tax that doesn't reward fossil fuel giants for their new projects. And let's use that as a stepping stone towards a carbon tax so the biggest polluters pay the biggest share towards fixing the climate chaos that they're creating. We keep hearing other parties saying that there's no money. We say to them, we are the 6th richest country in the world. There is money in the economy if you're ready to make the bold political choices. And if you're not ready, then we are.
Housing in our country is a shambles. Decades of selling off council houses without building anywhere near enough new homes to replace them, combined with a Wild West private rented sector and inflated house prices, means more and more people cannot afford to buy or rent and are being priced out of their communities. Where houses are built, they're unaffordable for all but a select few, too often built on precious green space and lacking any of the local services people need. Despite this perfect storm, the Prime Minister failed to mention housing once during his speech to Tory party conference this week. We hear on the doorstep almost every day how much this affects people. It keeps them up at night. It dictates the choices they make in their lives. Homes matter, and the government just doesn't get it, or doesn't want to. We know we can do better than this. And that's why we're so excited to announce our latest policy on housing. We've prioritised this issue because we think everyone deserves a warm, secure and affordable home. That's how to build stronger communities and better lives for all. Successive governments have left a generation of renters unable to put down lasting roots because they can't afford to get on the housing ladder, can't even touch the first rung. The broken housing market leaves people much less likely to feel at home where they live. It's hard to prioritise building relationships with your neighbours and local shop owners when you know you could get evicted with barely a moment's notice. And too many private landlords in England are lining their pockets despite a quarter of privately rented homes not even meeting the most basic standards of decency. So as part of our Fairer, Greener Homes Guarantee, we are announcing a package of policies to make every house and flat and bedsit a proper home. Every home should be properly insulated and free from damp and mould. We'd give renters the legal right to demand this from their landlords. No more battling to get things done, and no more risk that you'll get kicked out of your home for insisting that it meets basic standards. And we want the amount of rent you pay to be fair. So we'd give councils the power to bring the cost of renting in line with local wages. And make sure housing benefit is enough too. No more lying awake at night. No more lying awake at night worrying your landlord's going to price you out of your home. We would increase the number of council homes by 150,000 a year so that families don't languish on waiting lists while hundreds of thousands of properties in this country sit empty. That's our promise to everyone, a home that's warm, affordable and secure.
The other parties are simply not living in the real world when it comes to dealing with the housing crisis while reaching the critical net zero target. The Conservatives are capitulating to developers, while Labour still supports the highly damaging right to buy, which helped create the crisis. Meanwhile, we would invest billions to provide homeowners with grants so they can afford to insulate their homes, saving money and bringing down emissions. And this is just one example of the practical ideas we have which sit alongside our bold vision and the political will to make a difference and change the course of the country to a fairer and greener future. But to make that difference, to lead the way for the other parties to follow, we need power. And that means Green MPs. We're ambitious, and we know we can win. It's the people in this room, those joining us online and those coming out on the doorsteps with us at our National Action Days and every other day of the year that will make that happen. We have amazing candidates with brilliant campaign managers and organisers and motivated volunteers, and we have you. Wherever you are in the country, you can help us elect the next Green MPs. Whether that's by contributing your time at one of our National Action Weekends, increasing your monthly donation to the party if you can afford to, or lending your specialist skills behind the scenes. Because we know that this party is full of talented people. So whether you're a filmmaker, a fundraiser, or administrator, we need you. However you can contribute, working together, we can take on the bigger parties in our 4 target constituencies and all across England and Wales. You don't need me to tell you that our democracy is in need of a shake-up. And the first-past-the-post system presents its challenges. But where we focus our resources and campaign hard, we win, and we win big. Just look at our incredible gains at local elections. Since 2019, we've quadrupled our number of councillors. In May, we made breakthroughs onto 15 new councils, and now we're in ruling administration on 37 councils. And here they are. East Hart, Stafford, Warwick, Worcester, Derbyshire Dales, Ashford, Arran, Cannock Chase, Folkestone and Hythe, Lewes, Oxfordshire, Rother, South Oxfordshire, Spelthorne, Swale, Wealdon, West Oxfordshire, Forest of Dean, Stroud, North Somerset, East Devon, Monmouthshire, South Hams, Tewkesbury, West Devon, Sheffield, Baber, Broadland, East Suffolk, Huntingdonshire, Kings Lynn and West Norfolk, Waverley, East South Kesteven, Lancaster, Malvern Hills, and a Green majority in mid-Suffolk. Conference, I'd like to invite every Green councillor in the room to stand, and let's take a moment to thank them for all their fantastic work for their local community.